Hello, everyone. My name is Nathaniel Hall, and I'm a theatre maker and HIV activist from Manchester. And today I am joined by not a Mancunian, but I'd say an honorary Mancunian, screenwriting legend, Russell T Davies. Hello.
Hooray! I've lived in Manchester now for 33 years, so I'm just close to being accepted. Not quite.
I think we've made you one of our clan for sure.
God.
We're going to have just a little bit of a chat, and hopefully, we'll have a great time while we're doing it. So, but to kick us off, I thought we'd do some quickfire questions.
Oh, right.
And these are.
You're like Alison Hammond on This Morning, coming up with the right idea, aren't you?
Yeah.
I'm surprised you're not in a wedding dress.
These are all the important questions that everyone wants the answers to from you,
right.
for sure.
So
I want
quick fire answers as well. Right?
Yes, quick fire answers as well. Okay, so
Blue.
Here we go. Favorite chocolate bar?
Oh, the new Cadbury's Dark. I like that.
Oh, okay, interesting. Favorite film?
Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah, that's one of mine too. Favorite song?
Mary Hopkin. Those were the days. Mainly because my father used to teach Mary Hopkin.
Oh, wow. Okay, there you go. A bit of showbiz history there. Favorite piece of theatre or show?
Angels in America. I've only ever seen the one that was done at the National recently.
That's a good choice. I've never seen it live, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
The HBO version is fantastic. Favorite flavour of ice cream?
Joe's ice cream from Swansea, which is vanilla, but they only do vanilla.
Okay, yeah. Favorite TV show of 2020 so far?
I May Destroy You.
Yeah, I'm not all the way through it yet, but what I've seen.
Oh, the last episode is the best. The last episode is it's historic. It's amazing.
No spoilers. What does the T stand for?
It doesn't stand for anything. There's another Russell Davies who does stuff on Radio 4, so I shoved that in. I like to say it stands for tussle.
No, the actual answer was trans. But never mind.
It's 2020. I embrace it.
Yeah. Favorite place in the world?
Oh, Swansea, actually. The Mumbles in Swansea. Yeah.
The Mumbles.
Where my family is.
Cats or dogs?
Neither.
Oh, not an animal lover at all.
You won't get a pet in this house.
So I'll leave my dogs outside then.
Yeah, it's all over between us. Sorry.
Why
have a pet? Why? Sorry, say that again.
A fancy cocktail or a pint of beer or a non-alcoholic beverage?
I just have a gin and tonic, thanks. None of that nonsense.
Oh, yeah, that's good choice. Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Daddy or chips?
Daddy. Why is that?
There we go.
Is there something about the way I said that? At 57 years old.
I think it was the can't hold of the mug, as you said it.
I thought that's it.
That's all the.
I like the quick-fire questions. Hooray!
So let's just get to the boring stuff now. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you about. You've had obviously a hugely successful career and varied career, but I would probably say that Queer as Folk is what most people know you for. And I just wanted to go back a bit to the mid-90s when you were sort of thinking about writing that. What inspired you to write about Manchester's gay scene? What was it about? What was happening at the time that just sparked that idea?
It's funny because I was actually asked to write it. Sometimes it takes someone else to point out something really obvious to you. And there's a woman called Katrina Mackenzie at Channel 4 who said, "Why don't you write about that?" And because up until that point, I didn't think it was possible to write about that. And then I turned around and realised that I had 15 years of going out and 20 years of going out and clubbing and watching that scene. And I had always loved going out on Canal Street, obviously, but I loved going out on my own. If I used to bump into friends, I used to go away. I used to go and change clubs to be on my own. Because I realised afterwards, it was like research. I used to stand at the railing of like Cruise 101 and watch everyone dancing, and you're watching such a magical space. You're watching, even now, today, you're watching a space that people escape to. And the heat and the light, and in those days, the cigarette smoke and the noise, and you just watch people dancing thinking, you're a bank clerk normally, you're in the closet, you might not be out to your mum and dad, but you come here and you are yourself. What a dramatic place. I genuinely love the romance of a place like Canal Street, the romance of a gay space. And it's a true romance. There's drama in there, there's honesty, and there's liberation. You are yourself. And sometimes you're not yourself. You can go and be a completely different person. Sometimes you construct yourself to go down there. I've always said I think it was a matter of time before someone would have put that on screen, and a matter of time before a gay drama came along. And I'm so glad it was me. Not everyone is, but I am.
Yeah, of course.
I remember after the first episode, Go to Cruiser 101, and the man that does said, "I've set us back 20 years." Oh, thanks.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. That about representation. Then, do you think you were, as well as being sort of romanticized by that space and wanting to put it on screen, do you think there was a political or cultural motivation to get that out there, to get LGBT lives on screen? Because obviously previously to then, if we think about the early 90s, the late 80s, early 90s, representation of gay people was poor, and the tabloid press were, vilifying gay men and going through the AIDS crisis. So do you feel that maybe there was also part of you that was going, we need to get this out on screen?
Yes, definitely. And these things rise up. They kind of rise up in society. So when you look at the vote in 1967 that legalized homosexuality in this country, we often tell that story like it was the story of a great revolution, like Parliament was overthrown. Actually, an awful lot of MPs simply voted. Even I think Margaret Thatcher voted for that because it was just time. It was naturally. It was a huge victory. But it wasn't quite the battle that we like to tell. It was just a natural thing that happened, and it was the same. Genuinely, Queer Folk would have happened with or without me. I really do believe that. And talk about representation. There were so many people unhappy with the representation. There was like a public meeting on Canal Street after episode 5 where I was shouted at by furious lesbians who, of course, didn't have a presence in the show. And actually, when they did, I took the piss out of them slightly because I think that's very accurate of gay men and of the scene actually. So there was a lot of fury at the time. It wasn't it wasn't an easy ride. It was a rough ride on Canal Street because people had waited so long for the representation that, of course, they didn't see themselves. Not just that, I had gay men. It was this huge public meeting in that a bar used to be called Prague 5.
I used to still work in Prague 5.
Did you? Were you there in 1999?
No, I was working there in 2003, so 2004. So not far off. Yeah.
Did they speak at me? Did I echo from the wall? And
I felt your presence.
It was packed to the gunnels, that thing, and there were gay men sitting there, genuinely furious. I can see why. Genuinely furious. This man who said, "I sit at home and read a book every night, so they don't represent me." And I was like, "Oh, what a great drama that's going to be! A man sitting at home and reading a book." But I'm taking the mickey. And unfortunately, I did that night. I wasn't exactly kind that night. But there's a bigger point to be made that there was a lot of shame and fear that we were seen having sex. It took a long while. It took a good few years for Queer as Folk to be seen as a good thing. And there's still people out there angry about it. And I've got to be honest, if you're 18 years old, you've never heard of it. It's like some old black and white thing. We might as well be talking about Kathy Come Home. It's all a Carry On film or something. It's like, there's a great temptation to say, oh, it's the show. It's been replaced many times over now. Well, it's still on all 4, folks. You can still see
I was going to say, if you're under 18, definitely check it out. I think it's interesting you talk about that idea about shame within the community or within people, and that fear of because we were still fighting, and we are still fighting for acceptance, and for rights. And so I think obviously I can understand that fear a little bit. And I think in this, when I made my show first time, which is about my experiences of living with HIV, I went through all that as well.
Yeah.
But there was this sort of thing.
And your show's raw. Your show's your real life.
And I perform myself, but there was sort of moments that my director was going, "Do you really want to say that or do that? That's really putting yourself out there. Talking about drug taking or going to a sauna and all these things." I was like, no, because what would be the point if there wasn't the rawness and the drama that is real life in there?
Yeah. And it is hard because that man who piped up saying, "I just read a book sitting at home," wasn't necessarily shamed. That was genuinely his life.
Yeah.
It's kind of very easy to traduce your critics, but actually he had a point. Maybe he'd never taken a drug in his life. But nonetheless, but there is an element of shame that he's ashamed of those people who do, and that's just nonsense, because it's an immensely positive show. So those people are having a laugh, having a great time. So it's always a tricky one. If that happens, every single gay story, or now trans story or bi story,
of course,
there will people be saying. Also, you bump up against the fact that people can't recognise themselves. Some of those portraits of gay men are laser sharp accurate on that show. I actually sat once watching one episode with a man who one of the characters was based on, and it was so accurately him, and he just sat watching it going, what a load of rubbish. The fact that he said that in front of me probably tells you which character it was. And you just can't see yourself. That's equally fair. In the end, you just got to go and do it and write it and get it out there.
Absolutely. And what do you think the legacy of that program has been? I mean, I know you say this. I know you say that someone was going to write it, and I am glad it was you. I don't think it would have quite had the impact that it did have if it wasn't written by you. So yeah, what's that?
It's hard to say that. It's hard for me to say the legacy, and genuinely, if you are 18, why would you have heard of it? But I think it's got a good legacy. I think it's nicely remembered. I think it was very interesting before its transmission how many people in the television industry were taking the piss out of it, assuming that it would never work. They all assumed it would be not controversial or shocking. They all assumed it would be boring. They all thought it would be men sitting around a table saying, I'm very worried about Roger, he hasn't taken his pills, like that. And so the blast of energy that we got and a rampant sexuality was a great shock to many people. I know it's had some sort of legacies. My friend Tony Wood was the producer, then became the producer of Coronation Street. He said, I'm going to make Eileen's house on Coronation Street like Hazel's house on Queer as Folk, and Eileen became, and Anthony Cotton moved in that, and it became a house, and still is to some extent, a house full of waifs and strays. So it does have a tangible effect in that sense.
I didn't know that at all. And now you've said it. Now you've said it. I'm like, that is.
You can see it. You can absolutely see it.
Totally, yeah.
And at the same time, there's millions of other writers. It's like something I do get too much credit because there were people like the women on Bad Girls who, a year later, 2 years later, were producing that romance with Nikki and had doing brilliant stuff for women on screen. They didn't need me paving the way; they were doing that on ITV. It's like I was saying. There comes a time in society where things rise up and voices rise up, as is happening with trans stuff now. It's like there's not one voice, there's not one story, and there's certainly no safe path forward yet. It's a very difficult time, but it's rising. It's rising up. It's got to be good in the end, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a feeling that I know certainly within the work that I do of like the right people telling the right stories, so people owning their own stories and telling their stories.
Yeah. There is that.
You as a gay man writing that experience as a gay man, as those characters that you see and you interact with, and that are your friends and your community. And I think the same. I think even more so now, there is a drive for that, which I think is really
absolutely.
Really
you've got people like Juno Dawson now and Rebecca Root and people like that leading the way. It's brilliant. It's a good time.
Yeah.
Could be better, but it's not a bad time.
Yeah. What's your favourite memory from on set?
On set, it's just a nightmare. It's just on set. I'm just looking at my watch all day long like that. I'm just like, because I did love episode 7. Was one big party all set in Stuart's flat, so we kind of lived in that flat for 2 weeks, and that was nice. That was a laugh. The extras were lovely. The extras were like copping off in the background and stuff like that. But the cast all kind of settled down. Nice. These were nice days. Yeah.
I think people think being on set's like super exciting all the time, but actually it's just very long days. And
it's very long and very dull and very tense all at the same time.
There's a lot of pressure.
Nothing happens for a long time, but you're like literally time is money. I cannot stop looking at my watch on set. Yeah. It's just I'm too much of a producer in that sense. Just money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's really funny actually because there was a bit of controversy. So I was raised as a Christian, and at the church that I went to, there was a bit of controversy because one of the children was actually one of the actors in Queer as Folk. Wow. And I remember I remember discussions happening about it and being like, this thing had happened, and sort of not everyone, but some people in the church sort of having a problem with that the parents had let this child, their child being a gay drama.
Gosh, that's interesting.
And it just came to me then, really interesting, sort of early memory.
Wow, that's right about the same time. In the middle of Christmas, my mother had her 70th birthday, and some people didn't turn up to that because her son was the writer of Queer as Folk, which she never told me, bless her. Didn't make that my problem. Well, exactly. But the man who'd been the best man at their wedding didn't turn up.
But I guess that shows,
It's what I was saying about your story, Nathaniel, where you have to own it, and it's tough. Yeah, you have to brazen that out and live it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important, isn't it, to tell these stories, I think. Okay, let's fast forward a little bit then. So we'll get fast forward to cucumber, banana, and tofu.
Right. Yes.
What, that was quite some time after Queer as Folk that you
Yeah, I got diverted by Doctor Who. I was planning to write that around about kind of 2006, 2007, and literally had this huge diversion, and it eventually came out in 2015. That long, it sat and gestate.
And I think what I really loved about Cucumber particularly was there was this sense of like, what does it feel like as a gay man to get older? Like, what does it feel like when on that morning when you wake up and it's like, oh, the parties are all over?
Yeah. I mean, like, it genuinely wasn't very popular. Cucumber didn't get many viewing figures. It wasn't particularly liked. And I don't care. I love it, I mean that because it's a tough piece of work. It's actually about gay shame. That's what it's about, and it doesn't reveal that until the very last line. You sit through 8 hours of drama, and the last line tells you what the whole 8 hours have been about, which is risky. And I sometimes do sit here in my room. This is where I sit and write everything, and I do sit and think, what if I'd said that in episode 1? What if except I was also very averse to launching a show saying, "Hello, it's about gay shame." Right? What's that? Even though but also I think an audience is clever at that. I'm not sure you need to be told what a show is about, but that was tricky, genuinely tough when it was going into territories that a lot of gay men don't like talking about. And I kind of thought, oh, this will open up a discussion, and actually didn't open up a discussion. The discussion kind of like the stuff about, I don't know how much we go into detail, we go into it, about sex, about different forms of sex, about who does what, who's top, who's bottom, all of that, and who doesn't do that, which is still unspoken about to a vast extent. I think it's the one thing that gets us uptight, and you get uptight about it if you're not participating in that. And God, I know so many couples who live. Well, I'm really not sure how much detail we can go into here, so maybe we'll save it off camera. But I know so many couples who have been through physically what Henry and Lance are going through, but never talk about it, and it's never spoken about. So I made a drama about it, and it's still never spoken about. And no walls were broken down. It's a real frigid barrier, actually. Frigid is the word, I think, in its true sense. So tough piece of work. It wasn't young boys having sex in nightclubs, which is always going to be slightly more popular.
Well, that's what I was going to ask then. So you said that Cucumber wasn't necessarily that popular with the viewers. What about Banana then? How was that received, and what was the sort of...
That was received with a great fondness. It went out on E4, so its viewing figures it would have been easier to go around people's houses and tell them the story. You would have got more viewers that way. To be honest, it was. It helped a lot of new writers on that, a lot of new performers on that. People like my friend Bethany Black was in there, who was, I think, the world's first trans performer playing a trans role in a terrestrial series. You have to get all those words in place. And people like Letitia Wright were in that. My friend Fizayo Akinade. It was. Banana was like a great big playground, a great big experiment to get. It was kind of meager. Look, I'm getting older. Get young people in here, young directors, young writers, young actors, and gorgeous young actors in there. It was a magnificent playground, telling all sorts of stories across the spectrum, not just me and my gay men. That was the point: was to get trans stories, to get bisexual stories in there. There were gay stories that I'd never told, gay male stories that were new. It was a nice big experiment. It was fun.
I guess that's sort of how I saw it, in a sense of like, when you've got yourself to a certain level and you've achieved a certain level of success, it was like that thing of going, okay, where's the new talent and how can we help other people?
Well, you pay it forward. You do, you pay it forward, but you try to and hope that they'll employ you when I'm an old man. Please return the favour. Please.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so now I have to admit, we touched Doctor Who before. I have to admit, I'm not the biggest Doctor Who fan, but I know it would be sacrilegious to have this conversation. What's that? I know. Oh yeah, I can see that's a Dalek.
Thank you. See, everyone's a Doctor Who fan, really. Everyone knows it. It's in their blood.
I do enjoy watching Doctor Who, and I did watch it when it was relaunched. But yeah,
it's all right. Stop backpedaling. You're lacking. What we're saying is you're fundamentally lacking, and that's fine. You're a very pretty man. You've got that to balance it out.
We've all got a cross to bear, haven't we? Well, I guess like Doctor Who, moved you, I guess, really firmly into the TV establishment.
I suppose, yeah.
And I sort of, what was that experience like, and also what was it like writing for a show that so many people have ownership over, or feel they have ownership over, both in the production side of things, but also from the audience?
That is unusual. I was lucky because I'd been a fan, so I understood fandom. I knew what fandom would like. I did, and I think it was such an enormous success. And it was a show that had been had died, was kind of mocked, was kind of derided. Its memory, in the public's mind, wasn't a particularly happy one. It was seen as a cheap, daft show with rubber monsters. We took that, and in 1 year, made it the #1 show in Britain, and it won the BAFTA for Best Drama, up against the big, proper 9 o'clock dramas. I mean, it's a phenomenal turnaround. So I always knew that love was there. Actually, the fandom doesn't matter. When I was young, everyone used to watch it, and I knew that. And I knew we just had to tap back into that. And they were the maddest times. I mean, you become a writer. You know this. You're a writer and performer, but most people become writers so they can sit at home. I mean, basically, I want to sit in this office and never move. That's a good week. Do you know, after this, I've got nothing. I've got no meetings for like another 10 days. This is bliss. I'm just going to sit here. It's going to be lovely. I won't see anyone. And so Doctor Who was so public and so mad that I actually kind of slightly became famous. I know I'm not famous, but the truth of it is I would get stopped every day in the street, every single day. My husband used to sort of say, I bet, have you been stopped yet? And I'd say no, and he'd go, you will be. And I go, shut up. It's not like everyone knows I am. Oh, hello. And I would come. And Andrew would say, I told you.
Yeah.
I'm not now. That's long since gone. But those 5 years were like, and that's weird. You begin to understand why truly famous people go mad. Because I was just slightly like 0.001% famous, and it's really odd to have a stranger come up to you and give you a hug and ask for your autograph. It's weird. It's genuinely quite. I mean, you get that as an actor. You get spotted, seen, and with your work must mean an awful lot to people, so they emotionally invest in you, and it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah. It is, and that's, you're right. Particularly, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself famous, but people do approach me, and particularly after I've done a show, when they want to, if you've touched them on some level, with your story, they want to offload, they want to talk about that, and it's you've got to have a level of, for me anyway, particularly, I've got to have a level of obviously compassion and empathy towards that, but also know when the off switch is for that.
Yes, you're not there to save their life.
No, exactly.
It's hard. That's hard, isn't it? Because
it is. Yeah.
You've opened up. I'll put a show on about Canal Street, but it's like when I first used to go out on Canal Street after Queer as Folk went out. When I was slightly famous, people go, "Oh, that's the man who." I used to get like boys coming up to me, run away from home, and genuinely, like I've run away from home. I've come to There was one Scottish boy who was so lovely. I've run away from home. My mum and dad don't understand me. I saw Queer as Folk. I saw Manchester on television, so I've come to live here. And it would ruin my night because I couldn't walk away then. I couldn't leave someone. I used to stand there and cruise 101 and smoking away. Those are the days. Smoking indoors. Was that boy? Was he called? I think I've just given him the name Angus because he was Scottish. I can't remember his name now. But he was lovely. And I was literally going, will you phone your mother? Phone her now. We'll go to a phone box together. Because I knew full well these weren't kids in dire circumstances. The ones I met were not kids in terrible circumstances. These were stroppy, queenie teenagers who'd run out of home. So, you don't understand me. Goodbye. Like I was going, please phone your mother. And I genuinely helped some of those boys. I tried to help all of them. Phone their mums and dads and go back home. But it ruined my night. It was like I'd be there at 2 a.m. going, phone your mother now. But how do you not do that? How do you walk away?
You're right. You can't. And I think again that shows some of the legacy we haven't really touched on of Queer as Folk and potentially Cucumber and as well, and as portraying Manchester as this LGBT party capital. And I know there was a general trajectory as well. Manchester was on that path, but I think
still
definitely
is.
Still is, yeah. But I think for definitely, the show inspired lots of people to come here and has made it into genuinely. It's still, every city has its problems, but genuinely an LGBT friendly city. And I feel very comfortable in Manchester.
Oh yeah. But I was getting barracked for people on Canal Street were telling me that I ruined it because now hen nights were coming there and lots of women were coming there. Well, interestingly, in episode 3 of Queer as Folk, which was written before anyone had seen Queer as Folk, they are complaining about the hen nights on Canal Street. So it was already
there.
They were already there, and it's kind of a fantasy that there's a perfect gay space in existence somewhere. It's not anywhere, not even the Castro. It just doesn't exist. But nonetheless, point taken. It's hard. It's really, really tough. But what do you do? Just keep on working.
Sure. We'll go back to Doctor Who. Who's your favourite?
You can't do that to me. Just pull the plugs. It's like, I love them all. I do love them all. I've just seen Billie Piper's new show, which is on Sky. I Hate Susie, and she's phenomenal. Yeah. My God, I'm so lucky. I mean, that's the thing. It's hard to say to you as an actor, but it's the thing you never talk about in your job, is getting to work with actors, which is such a joy and a privilege. And I mean, I think you're all insane. All of you. To stand there on a camera or on a stage, doing it, exposing yourselves and being raw and learning it all, I think it's the most amazing thing. And spending time in the company. And my God, I was lucky on Doctor. I'd be lucky in all my shows. Yeah. What cast?
Yeah. Amazing cast, definitely. I just really remembered when Doctor Who came back, it was like this moment in TV where I think where production values as well really like stepped up a gear. And I don't know whether that was something to do with, with bringing Doctor Who back and going, we can't have the men in rubber masks anymore. Like it needs to compete with the sci-fi films in a sense.
That's interesting. It does. I used to say on it. I used to say we're making television, not movies, because I don't feel comfortable when they repeat Harry Potter films on a Saturday night. I don't think they work. I think they're very dark and moody Harry Potter films, actually, and they don't fit a Saturday night to me. I used to let's face our greatest success, our greatest viewing figures were when we had David Tennant and Kylie Minogue on board the Titanic on Christmas Day. That was our biggest success, and that I think is Doctor Who.
I think that was your campest success as well.
Campest and most successful, 13.3 million viewers. Phenomenal success, and it is meant to be that bright. It is meant to be that daft. It had the Titanic crashing onto Buckingham Palace at the end. It was nuts, that episode, and that really is the show. There's a danger you can think of it as too dark and too dramatic. It's a really funny show.
Yeah, I think that's why people are drawn to it as well, because often you're right. Television often. I feel like over the past few years it's become more filmic. We've got epic, sci-fi and fantasy dramas that replicate those films. And actually, for me, I go to TV. I know lots of people enjoy those, but for me, I go to TV for escape. I want to laugh. I want the humour of everyday life.
It's gone too far. It's yes, you end up with and I love Game of Thrones, but you end up with a Game of Thrones in which you can't see what's happening. There's no point in having 10,000 extras if it's too dark. It's like, don't turn the lights on. Let me see it.
I'm just checking the thing on with remote like this, trying to turn it up.
I know. I bet they're glad to have my advice. In their multi-billion-pound empire.
Yeah.
Oh, you put us straight now, Russell. Thank God.
Yeah.
Now we see.
Years and years.
Yes.
I just think was a phenomenal piece of television. I just thought it was.
Thank you.
But you must be a witch, surely. You are a witch, because.
Can you imagine if that had been transmitted a year later? It would have been. Do you know what? Despite everything they did, you cannot predict how mad things are ever going to get. If I'd have. Imagine predicting that A-level fiasco. Imagine predicting your head of education and your prime minister saying, we've got to beware that people aren't over-promoted, the children aren't over-promoted. I would have been laughed out the door. Yeah. Imagine predicting Donald Trump trying to close or defund the post office so that people can't vote by mail. I am a pathetic witch, because the real world is twice as mad and 10 times as dark as anything I could imagine. What a world we're living in. It's nuts.
Yeah.
My God, I tried, love.
You tried. I think it was probably your most overtly political program to date. And I just wondered what was driving you to write
the
that.
World?
Because it's a dystopian piece of drama.
The world, actually, to be honest, I think I always have been. In series 1 of Doctor Who, I blew up Downing Street. We aimed a missile, and the Doctor blew up Downing Street. Every single year on Doctor Who, we killed the Prime Minister. Every year there was a prime ministerial death, because that's what we need to do with them, bring them down. So it goes back to in Queer as Folk, there's never a scene where they say what they vote or what their opinion on politics is. But that's a hugely political show. The existence, to be queer in the 21st century is the political act. Anyone watching this, if you're anywhere on the spectrum, or if you're the mother of, or the son of, or the child of, or the friend of anyone on the spectrum, and everyone's on the spectrum somewhere, your life is political. You should get out there and vote, because they are acting against you. Clearly. Openly, they are. Shocking days. Shocking.
I know, and one of the things I thought was really remarkable about it was the way in which the storyline about the escaping across the channel,
the refugees, wasn't it?
Refugees,
here we are,
and how you transported that narrative, which is often spoken in the press, so coldly and so is so dehumanized, and how you brought that into a suburban British home.
Yes.
And you see that scene unfold, and you feel the pain and the grief and the anger of that situation. And I think what it was very powerful as a viewer to remind you of the humans behind the headlines, in a sense.
Thank you. That was the point, because to be in Britain, even if you don't have a good life in Britain, even if you're trapped now in the pandemic and you're using a food bank, nonetheless we are essentially comfortable compared to some countries of the world, compared to anyone having to take their children across an ocean. So it was to knock that comfort, was to say, look, that they are people like us. They're not like us, they are us. They are us, given too much of a flood in this country, given too much heat, given too much of a dictatorship, we'd be on the run, and we'd be trying to cross the channel the other way. Imagine if we weren't imagine if we weren't welcome. Imagine if the French said, we're not having it.
Yeah, exactly.
My God. We'd be drowning on French beaches. That's what would happen. So it was to show that. It was to say, we are refugees. We will all be refugees one day. If this climate crisis is, I'm grim today, but if this climate crisis is half of what they say it's going to be, we're all going to be fleeing.
Yeah. And again, that's the power of of television to not only entertain, but to allow people to reflect on those moments, I think, and those concepts and ideas.
To get that BBC One was an honour, to be honest. We all approached that story very seriously, with a lot of diligence. Shooting, that was a nightmare. Can you imagine those dinghies in the sea? It was in November. It was in a bar. Listen to me complaining. That's nothing compared to what a refugee goes through. So, it was a great team. Russell Tovey in that, just one of our finest actors and a great gay man himself. Brilliant.
Yeah. So, fast forwarding now to
then the next piece of nonsense I made, Nathaniel.
Current times. So what can you tell us, for those that don't know, haven't heard yet, you've got a new drama coming out called
I have,
so what can you tell us about
Nathaniel Hall? Thank you very much.
Oh yes, I have a little role in it. Yes, I do. What can you tell us about Boys? Because obviously it's not
you have
a
yet. Lovely role in there. It's not going until January, so it's all week. So I'm wary about speaking about it. A friend of mine actually said to me the other day, I thought it had been on. I was like, thanks. Okay. It's the story of the AIDS crisis in the 1980s, HIV and AIDS, but told via ordinary people. It's not in the laboratories and it's not in the corridors of power. It covers all 10 years. It goes from 1981 to 1991 with 5 lovely mates who all live in a flat. A lot of them based on friends of mine. I had a bunch of friends who all lived in a big flat in London they called the Pink Palace, and they were gay and camp and funny, and along comes the virus, and it's to show that, but with the passage of time as well. It's not just one story. There's an overlapping concertina stories that expand and show the development of how the disease was understood and how life went on as normal at the same time. I was there at the time. These characters are 18 in 1981, and I was 18 in 1981. And it's also trying to show that the world didn't stop. We didn't all think, oh my God, there's a disease, and stop. And also the ignorance that was around at the time, the prejudice, but not just that anger. It really is to show life being lived. And you got a lovely role in it, and Nathaniel's been modest here. When you've got a very big, important role as Donald Bassett in episode 3. It's your big story, and we're honoured you were there, darling. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. I think what you've been interesting you said there is about living and about life, because I do in my work through my show and my activism. I talk to lots of people. I get a great honour. I'm having a conversation with Jonathan Blake, who was patient L1. Canonised in the film Pride, played by Dominic West. I get to talk to these activists and these people, and they always say to me, and they always talk. They say, well, actually, it wasn't a miserable time. And my friend Paul says, I got good at writing eulogies in my 30s. It's like I could write a fabulous eulogy. And he's like, and yes, too many of my friends died, but I was still, I was still living. I was still going out dancing and loving. And
now you give me that line. Now you give me that line when it's all written down. I would have had that line. That's brilliant.
Got too good at it. You can have that one for the next one.
Your show is like that. Your show, I mean, your story. You could tell your story in a documentary and make it harrowing and desperate and awful. Your show's hilarious, and your one-man show, and it's brilliant. And anyone watching this should go and see it, because it's coming back, isn't it? It's doing the rounds.
It is, yes. Hopefully, all being well, with coronavirus restrictions easing. So hopefully, we should be back in the spring doing a tour. Yeah,
good, brilliant,
another
well
national
worth seeing.
Tour.
Yeah, and it's entertaining, because you are at the same time setting out to entertain.
Exactly, yeah, and that's if you want to get a message across, definitely you've got to also make them laugh, make them cry.
That's true.
And all those things. Anyway, I think we've got to wrap up. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, darling.
And yeah, thank you for spending some time.
Absolute pleasure. Happy Pride. Have a good time. Not the Pride we wanted, but we'll have our own pride in our own way.
It's not, but we'll be back together soon, I'm sure. And I'm sure everyone will be waiting with bated breath for the broadcast of Boys. Where can they see it?
It'll be on Channel 4. Dates to be announced, but it's January in 2021. Now, make the tea tonight. Let's stop pretending we're not in the same house. You make the tea. I'm upstairs, you're downstairs.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, just before we go, I want to show you my favourite cushion, actually. Do
you have to? Oh, wow. Actually, okay, that's a good cushion.
Yeah, I remember opening it on Christmas Day in front of my grandparents. I think I was a younger gay man when I got it. Now it has pride of place on my bed. Anyway, right, lovely to chat to you, and
you.
Yeah. Goodbye then.
Happy Pride, darling. Bye-bye.
Happy Pride.